But we're just going to jump in and start making some fun little Halloween spooky items. We have several things. Some of y'all were at CookieCon and y'all saw this gorgeous little gal here. She is a cookie. She consists of some isomalt, some wafer paper, and then some modeling paste. And then we also have this one right here, which is another portrait. It's also a cookie, just highlighted with gold. And it also uses wafer paper, and it uses a face mold and some hand molds.
That looks awesome.
So everybody is saying they can hear me. Great.
Yes, and they only hear one of you now.
So we're going to start out first. We're going to make a couple of items because we need to set them up a little bit. So I'm going to switch maybe cameras. All right.
There we
Can
go.
y'all see that?
Yes. Can you move your mat a little bit closer to your laptop?
Right. Can y'all still hear me also?
Yes, and we can still hear you.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're just going to start out. And what I'm doing is I'm using the Zoe molds. Some of y'all know I already have these in stock. And so we're going to be using the leg mold for the female. We're going to be using the face mold, the body, and the hand molds. For the other cookie, we're going to be using the male face mold and just the hand molds on this. So what we want to do is we're just going to take some modeling paste and we're just going to condition this. I'm using flesh color for the body parts for the creepy girl coming out of the picture frame. For the other one, for the male here, we could just use white if we wanted to, so it doesn't show through the wafer paper. But if you do use a flesh tone, it gives it even more of a creepy look. So we're just going to condition this paste just a little bit. I am using the Saraceno pasta model here. So I'm just going to work it. It does have cocoa butter in it, so it's activated by the heat. So I'm just going to take the mold, and you really don't have to have too much of the entire face details in this because, as you can see, we're going to cover most of her face up with hair. So we're just going to place the modeling paste into the mold. And we're going to let that set to the side for a minute. And that will set up, and then we will be able to get that out of there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start with her body. Now with her body, we're actually going to make the body, but we're not going to use the whole thing. We're going to actually cut it off. And if y'all were wondering where this picture frame mold is, it's one of Katie Sue's designs. I do know that Sydney also has a few picture frame molds. So depending on whatever size that you would like to use and how large you would like to make your piece, you can do that. Same process, just going to condition this paste a little bit. Now I'm trying to just put the smoothest side into the mold. So I'm just going to open up the mold a little bit and just push the paste in there. Press down. For this one, I'm not too worried about all of the excess on it. We're going to take some of that off of there. Just take a knife, spatula, flat edge, something. Just pull that excess off of there. And you can leave a little bit on there. That'll help get it out of the mold because, like I said, we are going to cover most of that up with this project. We're going to let her sit aside, and then we're going to make the 2 arms and 1 leg. See, Carol Ann, Sydney, Jessie Ann, Karen, Allie, Daniela, hey Daniela, Evelyn, so who, raise of hands, who is going to Cake International? Sorry, I can't hear what is being said on that end, if Lori and them are saying anything. Same process, we're just going to fill this mold, and what you want to do is you have some excess sitting up over here. You're just going to pinch that up to create kind of a rounded effect. Just smooth it with your fingers. And because of the heat from your fingers, it will actually smooth out that. And then we will just take off that little excess there because we don't need it. And then we will do the same with the other one. Yeah, the Saraceno I really like because it will hold up very well. Like I said, it is a cocoa butter based product, so you can tell that it is quite stiff. This is an older piece that I had. You can condition it. You can actually throw it in the microwave for just a couple of seconds, heat it up, and it will become pliable again. And then you can just work it. You do, because of the cocoa butter, you will have to let it sit back up a little bit, just so it'll retain its shape. But as you can see, it's very pliable, and it's good because once it does set up, you can go back and just take your finger, if you're not through, if you need to go and cook dinner or do something else real quick, you can just take your finger after it's set up a while, and the warmth from your hand, you'll still be able to work it and do some more detail work in it. All right, so we've got that one. Now we're going to do 1 leg, and we don't really need the whole leg, so I'm not going to go into the entire mold because, as you can see here, she is kind of crawling out of the picture frame, so we did not use the whole leg. I went just right above the knee on that. Same process, just push it in there. Now, a good way to get this particular paste to set up really quick, if you need to do a lot and you only have 1 mold, you can pop it in the freezer just like any other paste, fondant, gum paste. Let it sit up a bit, and then it will pull right out of the mold and make it a lot easier for that. All right, so we've got those. Those are the ones we're going to use now. Then we're going to just make the male head real quick. Now, for the head, for this particular picture, we are not going to make the full thing. We're just going to press a little bit into the mold. I'm trying to create that effect of that face pushing out in a scary way through the canvas of the artwork and the picture frame there. So we're just going to press that in there. All right, so we have those set right there. And then this is the hand molds. So we're going to make 2 hand molds. And we're just going to use just the hands for this. Now, I like this little project because wafer paper is such a good medium that you can use for making flowers or just about anything. But because you can get it wet and then it'll dry, when it dries, it actually dries pretty hard. And it will, then it will just stay rigid unless, of course, it gets wet again. You can draw on it, luster dust, paint on it, however you want to. But all you have to do is just get it wet. You can use paper potion, or you can use water. For this particular thing, I'm using water, but I'm also going to be using a brush to help fill it out. So we're just going to let those sit right there. So we're just going to let those sit out of the way for a moment while we gather up some more stuff there. All right, so the female, this mold is a Katie Sue mold. I am not sure, I forgot to check. I was going to check to see if Scott had any of these left on his website at nicholaslodge.com, but you can go to Katie Sue and get them also. These Zoe molds we have on my website at CBC Designs Online. We have the male, female molds, adult molds. They come, you can buy the head, the body, and then we have a hair molds, which we're going to be using just parts of it to cover up the hair. And then we also have a baby mold. If some of y'all saw the little baby that I have, there's a little baby mold, and he's real cute. He's not very big at all. The curse of the hot hands, yes. That's why this works, because I actually have hot hands also. So it works very well for me. Because as you can see here in the house, this is already pretty set up here. So you just want to pinch the way. Now, normally you would want to stick, there's a slit right here in the mat, the molds. You'll want to put a stick through there into the neck like this, and that would help you pull out the mold so you were maintained all your definition if you were using that. We're not too worried about all of that at the moment. So we're just going to pull it out. And it's set up pretty quick there. But like I said, we're not too worried about making sure this is all smooth and straight because we're going to be covering all of that up. So the same for the face molds. Normally when you would do them and you would pull them out of the mold, you would want to stick a skewer or a wire, like an 18 gauge wire in there. And then you want to pull up. The molds are marked with the logo on them. That is the side of the face and the nose because you don't want to put any pressure there. So you can make sure you get the detail out. So we are going to pull this out. This is the female mold. She has some creases in her. That is from me not having it completely smooth. But like I said, that is fine because we're going to be covering her up. She's creepy, scary. The male mold, same thing. He's coming out of there. We're only going to use a portion of that. We're actually going to flatten him out a little bit. Then we're going to take out the leg we're going to use. Open that up, pull that out. There we go. Now, what you do need to remember is when you're using these molds for the legs, this is actually the top of the mold. So this is the top of her foot. So there are some edges right here, but you can just take your finger or a modeling tool or a paintbrush, just rub over it and it will smooth those out. So you can get that smooth round edge on it. I don't know if you can see, it's starting to smooth out there. That's why I like this paste. Because even though you're working with it, you can do all of that and then let it sit and it will still be pliable when you get done. Same with the arms. All these molds come with little notches in them to help remove them. For this project, we don't need the wires. So we'll just pull those out and then we'll pull out the hands for the other one. So we also in this project are using Sydney's Isomalt, the black glitter. Everybody loves the black glitter. I think it's in the microwave. Sydney's beautiful black glitter that she has, and I hope she has plenty in stock because I need more. So now that we have our pieces, we're going to start working on our molds here. So what we're going to do is we only want to use probably the upper half of her body because it's going to come out. Now, if you'll notice, I have her kind of leaning back. So the way we're going to compensate for that is we're just going to cut it at a slight angle here and just cut that off. That way when she's sitting, she's kind of leaning back here. All right, so we're going to do that. Now, this particular cookie is just a regular gingerbread cookie that I baked. This is actually brown modeling chocolate. Fondant on top of it. I used fondant with this one also. Once it was set hard, that's when I poured the isomalt into it. You can use just a regular cookie. I would not use the modeling chocolate with this because if you pour the isomalt on top of it, it's going to melt it a little bit. So we're going to start with our cookie here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to take my body and position her where I want her. Now, she will stick together with just a little bit of water. So I'm just going to use a little bit of water and stick her on there. This paste works really well for that. You don't have to worry. Once it gets wet, it will stick to itself, which helps when you're building items. So we're just going to position her there, kind of towards the back. And what I'm going to do now is we're going to use some wafer paper because we want to cover her up and kind of create a dress effect on her. We're not going to see much of it. But I'm just going to cut a square out. And we're just basically just going to drape this on top of her. So I just have a bowl of water sitting over here. And I'm just going to dip it into the water. And it will get extremely soft. Now this is very good in the fact you can work it just like paper mache. So I'm not too worried. We're just going to drape it over here. Now you can see that it's kind of see-through gauzy. And I'm going to push all of this that's under here. I'm just going to use a paintbrush. I'm just going to push all that up under there because we want it to look like it's kind of gathered there. When this dries, it'll dry white. You'll be able to see a little bit of the skin, but like I said, we're not going to be able to see much of her body. But we can also put another piece on top of it to make it a little thicker. Just like so. So the wafer paper is really good. You can create clothes out of it and so forth. So now we're going to sit there. So right here on the top, her head is going to go here. So I'm going to just take my scissors and I'm going to cut that open right there so her head can sit there. So can everybody see how we just kind of covered up her body there to give her a little dress there? Now I am going to take, the fondant's a little wet, so I'm just going to take a paper towel and sop a little bit of that up off of there. And then we're going to work with her arms. We want her arms to come off. So, of course, this is her hand. So what you want to do, you can separate these. You can take your X-Acto knife or any little tool and just separate the fingers. Just cut them out. There's little indentions there. Then, of course, this would be the top of the hand. You can separate the fingers out like this. Kind of pinch them to give them a little bit more definition. Hey, Becky. Becky, aren't y'all on a trip somewhere? So we're going to just position the hands however we want them. Remember, she's climbing out of the picture frame, so they can be as creepy as you want them to be. They can come off of her. You can have them grabbing the side like that. Gonna put her arms on there. And I'm not going to worry right here in this spot about putting any wafer paper there for a dress because that will be covered up by her hair. So we're going to take her other arm. We're going to do the same thing. Just open up those fingers. So when you're making any of the dolls, you can do this process. And we're just going to smooth out that. I'm just going to take my fingers, warm up, paste up, and try to get rid of some of those lines a little bit. Now, to make them bend at the elbow, what you can actually do there is you can take just a round object and just kind of push in there to create that joint in that elbow, and it'll just help it bend a little bit more. So we're going to place her like this on here. So I'm going to add all the body parts first before we go in and put the head on, because I want to make sure we're going to pour the Isomalt first to make sure everything is set in place. So the same for her leg. We're actually going to bend this. Now, this one is kind of large, so I'm going to, the same way, I'm going to just kind of cut this off right here at her knee area and bend it so she sticks out like this. So like she's crawling out. Need a little bit of water there. Remember, this paste will stick to itself with water. You can also stick a little bit of water onto the fondant or modeling paste to hold it down. All right, so we're going to add another piece of drape right here to her to cover up her knee, leg. Can I move closer to the center of the mat? How's that? Is that better? Is that better? There we go. We'll do that. All right. So same process. We're just going to take a piece of wafer paper. I'm going to get it wet. This is going to be part of her dress skirt. Doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, she is oozing out of a picture frame. So you can make it as long as you want, depending on how you want it. I like to leave a little bit over to make it look like she's coming out of there. Just like that. So this one is not sticking because I actually have some wafer paper there. So we're going to just take a little bit of that away. The paste will stick to itself, but it has a hard time sticking to the wafer paper. So I'm just going to make a hole there so this will stick. There we go. All right. So there we go. So now what I'm going to do is before we put the head onto her, I want to pour the Isomalt in. So I'm going to heat up my Isomalt, a Simi black glitter. So on her, I put a shoe, and I just took a little bit of black paste and put that on her. So with the Isomalt, just make sure that you melt it to a nice pourable consistency. For this, you don't really have to worry so much about there not being bubbles in it because it gives it that eerie look to it. So she actually moves along pretty quick. I put it. All right, I have my Isomalt bubbling here. And you can see, so I'm just going to let it just stop bubbling, just so it's not boiling anymore. And then I'm going to pour it in, and we're going to let that set. And while it sets, we're going to move over to start the Scream version, as I call it. So we're just going to pour this in. Now, this will just kind of bind everything together inside the frame mold. Be careful when you're pouring, of course, as always. Don't want Sydney yelling at us about burning ourselves. All right, so we have her filled up. We have her dress still kind of spilling out there through that. We can go back and add another piece after that sets. Won't take long for it to set, but this will also kind of hold her arms and her legs in place. You can kind of adjust them however you want to. All right, so I'm just going to push her aside for a moment. Now for this one right here, I used the same molds and it made my cookie. I used a just a regular gingerbread cookie, no spread. But what I did is I actually cut a piece to fit into the cookie. This is just a piece of dried fondant. You can use gum paste or whatever, but I made it for the size of this. And I did that so I wouldn't get my cookie all wet while I was working with the wafer paper. So for this one, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take the male face here and we're going to lay him on to the piece, and we're going to I'm going to get the back of him wet so he will stick. And I'm just going to kind of push him at an angle. And then I'm going to take his hands. Now with his hands, I'm not going to cut them open, the fingers open, because you really can't see that so much into the picture. But I'm just going to just cut this here and kind of stick this on here. Just put a little water there. Now, if you want to raise it up a little more to make it stand out a little bit more, you can put a little piece of paste underneath it, and that'll help support it up. I'm just going to put that right there. And then we will do the same with the other one. And you can decide where you want to place them and how you want them to be on here. Just to raise that up a little bit. Just like that. All right. So, of course, now you see he is hanging out over the edge, which is fine because that means when you put him on there, it'll be hanging out over the edge of the thing. So what I did for this one is the exact same process. Like on this one, though, I did use white underneath it instead of this. This will kind of make it a little bit more creepy for us. We're just going to cut some more strips. Now, I find when you're laying something over in this manner, it helps if you use just a couple of different strips. So the first one, I'm going to use a couple of smaller ones and put on there, and then I'm going to put a larger one on there to cover the entire thing. So Hillary, Saraceno, there is some on Amazon. You can find white. Not sure where you're located. Marissa has some white at the Sweet Chalet in Sanford. She also does carry another brand of paste. It's called Smart Flex. It works really well also. This is just the brand that I've been using a while and I prefer it. So as you can see, I'm just taking the back of a paintbrush and I want to make sure that I push down into those eye cavities to get that detail there. I'm going to do the same with this one. And where it's going to overlap here, you're really not going to be able to see that. Just want to make sure that you can kind of see the detail into the face because you want to make sure it's got that weird pushing through the canvas look. And I'm just going to tuck all that extra around there. And then for this one, I'm going to just lay the entire piece on top. Now I am just dipping this in a bowl of just water, but you can also just take a regular, I have a water brush here. You can use a water brush too, and that will help kind of get that on there. The reason I want to lay this larger piece on there is because now it looks like it's really being stretched out. And we're just going to, all the edges here, we're just going to take that and just tuck all that in. because when we put that on the cookie, that will be the edge of the canvas tucked into the cookie. All right. Everything good so far? Now you can go back once these are done and touch them up with some luster dust or some highlights, however you would like to do it. But see how that creates that canvas on there? Like it's being pulled and pushed through. So we'll let him sit there and dry a moment. We're going to come back to our girl here. Now we want to set her on the neck here. And you can take a toothpick at this point and put that in there. Normally the Saraceno paste will hold up, but just for this demonstration, I'm going to stick a toothpick in her to make sure that her head doesn't fall off. But if you were to make this in advance, you can just put a tiny divot here. Just put a tiny divot right there into the base of her head. And then take a little bit of water. And then you can just set her on. So actually, I don't think I'm going to need the toothpick. So we're just going to set her on like that. Now, we notice the back of her head is kind of flat, but we aren't going to worry about that because we're going to put some hair on her. So for the hair, I'm just going to use some fondant. You can use modeling paste, fondant, whatever you want to use. I'm just going to condition this up real quick. Try to stay in front of the camera for you. Apologize about that. So before I put her hair on real quick, what I want to do is I want to dust the edge of the frame with some gold. Now I'm using, I just have some gold powder here. This is my Glamour Golds from my website that you can buy from the Lanyap. We're just going to dust over the top of the picture frame. And we're going to do this on both of them just to give it that old creepy antique look. And I'm just dry dusting this. Is the video keep stopping? Is it coming in and out? All right, so there we have the gold on it. I'm going to go ahead and put the gold on this one also. It is not as dark, so it's not going to have the same look, but it will still have that kind of antique-y look. And you could paint this on wet if you wanted to. All right. Let's move that over the other way. So we're going to move back to her hair. Get rid of and for this one, I'm going to use the curly hair molds. And basically, for the first part of it, you can just take a piece of fondant and you can get her head wet, just the back of her head here, because you want to make sure this sticks. And this doesn't have to have any detail to it, but you can just put that on right there just to kind of start it, give it a base, and it will also help hold the head in place. And then what you want to do is same thing as with the other molds. You can use any of these. Just press the fondant into the mold. You don't have to worry about the back too much for this project. Then we're just going to flex the mold and pull it out, and you'll get that nice detail into the mold. And then we will do the same thing. We're just going to, this will just stick on here. We're just going to start making her hair. And you want to kind of use long stringy pieces. So on this mold, I'm using the longer ones and then the shorter ones here. Just kind of overlap them. If you have too much on there, you can just cut it off. Whoops. I'm going to put another piece of fondant back there. And then we're just going to keep overlaying her hair. So I'm just going to overlay the longer pieces to the back to give her that detail. And then the short stringy pieces, I'm going to put over her face to kind of cover up her face because you don't really want to see her face. So we're just going to continue to do this. Now, if you don't have the molds, you can just do this by hand and then just take a tool and create some texture in it. But the molds are very flexible. They just come right out of there. I'm going to start creating some of the smaller ones. Also, if you were to create one of the larger ones, turn this around. If you were to create one of these larger ones like this, and you wanted to put this in here, you can just take this one piece, and then you could just cut it. You could use a wheel and just cut it down skinny like this, however you want to use it, and use those pieces. Thank you. I'm trying to look up to see if I can catch the comments. I will go back and read them. If y'all have any questions, please let me know. Because of our technical difficulties, I don't know why I cannot hear on my end. So it's just a quick, it actually is a pretty quick and easy project to do. So when you're covering up her face, you just want to make sure that you can still see a little bit of her face through there, just for that detail look. And you can put as much hair on there as you want or as little, however you want to do it. So that's how you would create this effect on her with her wet, stringy hair. Now you can go back and put like a glaze on top of it if you would like to kind of make it shine. What I did was I just took some of my white silver. This is the white silver, Lanyap white silver. And I just took a little bit of it and I just brushed the top of it. And it does give it kind of a silver eerie look to it. But just to highlight that kind of wet look of her climbing out of the puddle of the picture frame. So there we have her creeping out of there. And you can add more detail to her if you would like. And then this, of course, would be the guy. When this actually dries, it will dry at a wider, but it also, I kind of like the look of the skin tone pushing through there. And then you can go back with some highlights, silver or blacks or whatever. I just touched this one up with silver just to kind of highlight into some of the areas of it to make it stand out a little bit more. Any questions on those two? And then we're going to move on real quick to another little project that I just think is fun. We're going to use, this is the skull mold from Simi Isomalt. Sydney has these. It's a two-part mold. You can make it with chocolate, then sculpt. But what I'm going to do is we're just going to make a half skull here. And we're going to make this out of wafer paper. So what we want to do is we actually want to just cover this. It's another project. You can use any type of mold or form. You can use balloons. But I just wanted to show you how that you can do this by just taking some plastic wrap, and I'm going to lay this on the mold. I'm going to lift this up because I want to make sure the plastic wrap gets into the cavity of the eye there and there. Press that down, and then just kind of press it around the sides. And then we're going to actually do the same thing with the wafer paper. We're going to use larger sheets. Thank you, Sydney. So I'm just going to cut some larger pieces here. Same process, get them wet. Doesn't take a lot of water. The wafer paper really absorbs it in. Then we're going to lay that on there and just press down. I'm filling in that eye socket there. Now, I'm not too worried about these being all the way down around the edge here. You can do it like halfway. If you do it all the way down around the edge and tuck it in, it'll stick and make it very hard to get it off of there. Because once it dries, like I said, it is very firm, but it will also can crack unless you put multiple layers on it. but also just if you have folds or creases in it, like right here we have this crease from the overlap, leave those because it's going to make a fun little indentation because we can actually turn these into mummies. I'm going to take one more piece and lay it on there. Just showing you how we can do this. You can do this with pumpkins also. Pumpkin molds, balloons, eggs, anything. It makes it a very lightweight form that you can use. And leave all those little creases in there like those. Because that will make it look, if you're going to make like a mummy, it'll make it look like a skull, like the gauze on the mummy. Now you can go back with a water brush and you can just continually work with it and it would eventually smooth all that out. But you have to make sure, remember, you put the plastic wrap on there. Don't tighten it down so you can pop it off. All right. You can also do the same thing with little skulls. So these are just some little skulls that I bought. I covered them with plastic wrap, and I did the same thing just to create some little skulls. So if you need some little bitty skulls, you can go back in with black, put in some teeth, draw on the nose, do the eyes, and they just pop right off of the plastic wrap. This one is actually kind of cool because around the teeth area, it's got some holes in it. So those are fun that you can use just as accents on everything. But this guy, like Stacy was asking me earlier, how hard does it dry once you do this? It dries very hard. So you can do different things with it. This one, I already started cutting a hole in it for an eye because I wanted it to be a mummy. I am going to just extend this out a little bit more. Just going to cut it here. And it is very brittle. It'll snap. I wouldn't say it's really brittle. It's just the edges that you break off will snap and fly off. So we're going to take that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some chocolate brown. And remember I was talking about leaving those creases in there. I'm just going to take some of this and we're just going to hit some of those creases into there just to make it look like gauze and just kind of give it this gauzy effect that he's been wrapped in gauze. And I'm just hitting the edges of the gauze just to highlight them a little bit. I did leave his teeth showing there. You can go back with a marker. Some more gauze up here. Creepy skull, you can use it, maybe if you're doing a pirate cake, you could turn it into a pirate skull there. You can use an edible marker, and you can just draw in here where the nose would have been, just to accent that. You can leave the other eye there, or you could draw it in the other eye socket. Like I said, he's a skull, so it really doesn't have to be that perfect. But then one of the other things you can do is you can make an eyeball. And I made this with Simi Isomalt. She has available 2 sizes of eyes, and she has the pre-printed sheets that you can use. And you can turn this little guy over, press him in there from the back. And what you can do there to hold it in place is you can take another piece of wafer paper or a piece of fondant, get it wet, and then just place it over there just to kind of seal it in. And that will hold it in place once it dries from behind. And then when you turn it over, he's got his little creepy eye sticking out there. So that's just some fun, creepy little things that we can do with wafer paper. There's so much more that can be done with it. We have our guys here. And of course, if y'all have any questions at all, please type them in the comments, message me. I will go back and read them and be able to answer them for y'all. So I hope y'all enjoyed it and y'all have fun. Happy Halloween, and we will see y'all soon.